Hello, Happy and Fit. It's Tuesday, my favorite day, best practices. I'm so excited. Eric's here too, but you can just see his shoulder.
Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Oh my gosh. So I'm so excited for our guest speaker tonight, Jessica Clark. She transformed a lot of our thinking, and then we went down this like obsession, I would say, Jess, like a super mega obsession over the Enneagram. And the reason I loved it, so we had a workshop with her, and she's good friends with we're good friends now, but how I met her was through a good friend at our workshop. And I think it just awakened me, because sometimes some of my character traits can be misunderstood, or I feel like I'm being too much. People may think that I'm being rude when I'm just being honest, and how much, people I think have said I'm heartless, but I think I have the biggest heart. So it just is, there were some conflicting things about myself. And when Jess came to our workshop, it just all clicked and it all made sense. And it helped me not only understand myself, but understand other people, including Eric. I would feel like that was the hugest thing. He said, you need to ask me better questions. Like, if you are vague, you're going to get terrible answers. And so I feel like our marriage got stronger because of Jessica's workshop on the Enneagram. So she is a certified Enneagram coach, and we chatted the other day, well, not the other day, like a few weeks ago, #quarantine, actually a few months ago. Let's get real here. And I was like, you've got to speak to Happy and Fit. You've got to speak to them about this, because you're so good at it. And I just want the crew to understand themselves better and understand other people better. She's married to Sawyer. They live in the Bay Area, and they have a precious little boy, Landon. And it's just been cool to do motherhood together and just go through these milestones together and just talk all things. And also just being entrepreneurs and she's building her business and all the things. So Jess, it is seriously such a treat that you're here, and we are so excited. I'm going to mute myself so you can go ahead and get started.
Oh, thank you so much, Julianne. That's really sweet. So good to see all of you guys. So good to meet you. I'm going to actually share my screen. So I have a little PowerPoint to share. One second. Okay. Can you guys see that? Perfect. Okay, you guys. It is so good to be with you all, Team Happy and Fit. Yeah, thank you for letting me come and share with you guys about the Enneagram and how it might affect our leadership and our businesses. Some of you may or may not have heard of the Enneagram before. If you haven't, that is completely okay. I don't expect all of you to be already familiar with the Enneagram, but I understand that some of you may have some familiarity. It has gained a lot of popularity as of recent. So yeah, let's just get started. I want to try and move through this quickly. There's so much I can talk about the Enneagram, and my normal workshop style is 4 hours. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of do a very, very condensed version of just explaining a higher overview level of the Enneagram and how it can help us. So I'm not going to go into all the 9 types because, again, that would take a long time, but I will address the 9 types. So yeah, with that, we'll get started. So I wanted just to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a new face around here. So I'm a wife to Sawyer. You can see a little picture of him, my son Landon. Yeah, I have an 8-month-old, and he is just the bright spot of my life right now. Yeah, I really just adore all this family time we have gotten to have recently with quarantine. So I am a type 9 on the Enneagram. My husband Sawyer is a type 3. Landon is to be determined. We shall see. It'll be fun to kind of watch him grow. Aside from being a wife and a mom, I am a coach. So I do a lot of coaching. I'm also a coach trainer. So I do a couple different forms of coaching. I do Enneagram coaching. I also work for Western Seminary in their transformational coaching program. They have a campus here in San Jose, so I coach coaches. and I also teach coaching classes there. So my world is coaching, but I just love the Enneagram. That is my first and foremost favorite. It's my passion, and I love to coach on the Enneagram, and I also teach on the Enneagram as well. That's a bit about me. Here's what we got going today. This is what I wanted to talk to you guys about, addressing these few things. What is the Enneagram and how can it help us? I'm going to go into a general overview of the 9 types and then address subtypes. This is another element of the Enneagram that you may or may not have heard of before, but it's such a game changer once you know about subtypes. And then we'll look into a little bit about how the Enneagram can be helpful to you in your business. And then we'll talk about some next steps, what you can do with this information. So here's what we got going on. Okay, so a lot of you may or may not be familiar with the Enneagram. Like I said, there are a lot of definitions of the Enneagram out there. So that's first and foremost. And the Enneagram can be really hard to describe. It's pretty complex. So how I like to describe it, I like to describe the Enneagram as a sense-making framework that is centered around 9 interconnected and dynamic personality types. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about by this symbol over here to the right. Now you may or may not have looked at this symbol before, and you're probably like thinking, oh my gosh, that kind of looks a little cultish. I know, I thought that too, but there's a lot of meaning and symbolism behind that symbol, but we're not going to get into that tonight. So this is the Enneagram symbol, and you can see there's a lot of lines. So all of the 9 Enneagram types are interconnected in some way, but we all have one type. So a very, very, very short summary of the Enneagram that I like to address is say that it's a sense-making framework. It's very dynamic. It's composed of 9 interconnected personality types. And each of these nine types have a habitual way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And those patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving are all driven by an inner motivation to both fulfill a core need or desire and at the same time avoid a particular fear. So that is, in essence, what the Enneagram is. And I really like to talk about it as a sense-making framework because that's actually what it is. It helps us make sense of who we are and why we do the things that we do. I also like to talk about the Enneagram as it's different to other personality types out there. So people ask me all the time, like, well, how is the Enneagram different than like Myers-Briggs, right? I think the Enneagram really captures, in essence, personality because it is so dynamic and it is so complex. We don't just fit into a box. We reflect different, we reflect and act differently in different seasons. And the Enneagram, I think, captures all of our complexities really beautifully. The Enneagram is also different because it addresses the core inner motivation that drives your patterns and behaviors. It addresses that first. And other personality assessments out there maybe just address the patterns of thinking and behaving first, not so much the inner drive of like, why are you doing these things? So that's what the Enneagram highlights, and I think that is what makes it so powerful. So how can the Enneagram help us? So these are a few things. I mean, gosh, it helps us in so many ways, but these are the things that I think really, really, these are things that I think the Enneagram can really give us. So it reveals our unique roadmap to growth. And I like to talk about the Enneagram as a roadmap as well. It kind of shows us where we are, kind of like a GPS. A lot of the times, if you didn't have a GPS, maybe you would just instinctually know where you're going. And if you are that person, that's great, good for you, but I can't do anything without a GPS. So the GPS kind of shows us where we are on the map, and it shows us where we're going and the quickest route to get there, right? So I think the Enneagram can be similar to that. It shows us where we are on the roadmap of our personality, and it shows us the quickest way to growth. That's how I like to picture it. And it reveals our patterns of thinking and behaving. So yeah, it illuminates our hidden motivations that help us make sense of where we get most stuck. So a lot of the times, I would say the Enneagram can reveal how we have fallen asleep to ourselves. A lot of time we are walking around in our personality kind of asleep. Low self-awareness. We just find ourselves in these patterns of doing things how we've always done them. And a lot of times we're not really thinking about it, right? We're just doing what we're doing. And until one day something happens, COVID-19 could be a great example of this, where we have time and space to reflect of like, I find myself like, why do I do the things I do? So the Enneagram can reveal those patterns. But what I love about it is it addresses the inner motivation, the why behind all of that. And a lot of times these patterns are so ingrained that it's mostly subconscious. We're not even aware that we're doing these things, right? So the Enneagram gives us a mirror of like, here's what you're doing, and here's how you can grow. Here's how you can get unstuck. You don't have to stay there. That's super powerful. It also empowers us to operate out of our really unique strengths. So I think this is huge because a lot of us are really aware of our weaknesses. A lot of us, even when we're looking at the Enneagram for the first time, a lot of times I'll say, you know what Enneagram type yours is? If you kind of are thinking, ugh, that's the worst. Who would ever want to be that type? That's probably a good indicator that may be your type because you're really quick to notice your shortcomings. But a lot of us can tend to downplay our strengths. We may be aware of our strengths, but it may be some things that other people have said about us before, or, we've always had a certain gift. But I think the Enneagram can really highlight what we can be like at the height of our health, and give us a way to move forward to that, which is amazing. It shows us who we can become when we're living the healthiest version of ourselves. And I think it also enables us to see ourselves and others newly with compassion, understanding, and hope. I think this is a big one, because I like to think about the Enneagram too, and the 9 types. It's like we're all walking around with different colored glasses on, and we all see the world through our own colored glasses. And it's not until we have self-awareness to take our glasses off and look at them and be like, oh, that's interesting. I see this in a really different way than this person. And you take someone else's glasses and put them on, and you're like, oh, wow, that's interesting. They see things completely differently than I do. And they're not trying to be the worst. They're not trying to annoy me. This is just how they are. So I think the Enneagram can be a huge healing component for relationship. That has been, to me, one of the biggest gifts of the Enneagram. It has helped me tremendously in my marriage, like Julianne was saying, with her and Eric. It just highlights difference, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. The Enneagram gives shared language for how you can understand one another better. So I think that is probably one of the biggest ways the Enneagram can help us. Okay, so here are the 9 types. I really wish I could go into everything about the 9 types, but I'm not going to, just out of time. So here are the 9 types: type 1, the reformer; type 2, the helper; type 3, the achiever; type 4, the romantic; 5, investigator; 6, the loyalist; 7, the enthusiast; type 8, the challenger; type 9, the peacemaker. So, again, just as a recap, so all of these types have a habitual pattern of thinking, feeling, behaving. And they are all those patterns are driven by inner motivation to achieve a basic desire, one core desire, and avoid one fear. So those are the motivators that drive behavior. So each of these types that looks different for every single type. And it's just good to note here too that the names associated with these types can be helpful for those who don't know about the Enneagram, because you may look at this list and be like, oh, I'm a helper, cool, I can help people. But that doesn't mean that's your type. So when I teach the Enneagram, I don't necessarily like to talk about type in reference to just giving the names, just talking about names. It can be helpful when you are introducing this with people because they can kind of wrap their mind around what they might be. But the danger about names, it can just be very stereotypical. You can box people in. You can make a lot of assumptions. And I don't think that's fair. So we have to be really careful when we're learning the Enneagram to tread graciously and give yourself a lot of grace and give others a lot of grace, and not make assumptions, because it's very easy to box people and be like, oh, so-and-so is such a peacemaker. Just be careful with how you approach the Enneagram. So these are the 9 types. Okay, so subtypes. I think this is super important. And a lot of you may or may not know what subtypes are. So again, there are 9 types on the Enneagram. And the Enneagram talks a lot about, there's another component that I only had just really studied for myself, last year. And when I figured out what the subtypes are, my mind was just blown. It's another layer of Enneagram knowledge that I think is so foundational into understanding just more components about who you are and your type and how you operate. So subtypes, in essence, it's a concept in the Enneagram that refers to our basic instincts, so our instinctual drives. So in the Enneagram system, the instincts influence the expression that we all possess in personality in terms of thinking, feeling, behaving. So subtypes are the instincts that are the expression of that, of the thinking, feeling, behaving. So we all have 3 primary instincts. We have self-preservation instinct, we have social instinct, and we have one-to-one bonding instinct. So again, all of us have these instincts. All the 9 types have all these instincts. It's just for each one of us, we have one instinctual drive that dominates the others. So we lead with one of these instincts. So I'll give you some examples. So self-preservation. Self-preservation instinct is the instinctual drive to look for security, well-being, comfort, and satisfaction. It's the drive to get your basic survival needs met. And for self-preservation dominant types, finding a sense of structure, protection, and nurturing one's immediate environment is the driving force. So that's, if you are a self-preservation dominant, you're very, very oriented around taking care of your own needs. One-to-one instinct. So these people have the drive to look for security, well-being, and satisfaction in the bonding of intimate relationships with the other. So their focus is on more intimate quality relationship. And the social instinct. So this social instinct is the drive to seek security, well-being, and satisfaction in the collective. So as you're very focused in your own relation to the group. So your family, your community, and so forth. So I'll give you an example of how this plays out in action. So let's say you're walking into a party, a big like New Year's gathering, right? The self-preservation dominant, their first thought when they walk into the room is, it's too hot in here, where's the food? The social instinct dominant person, it walks into the room and says, okay, where's my group of people? I will probably, okay, that group over there. So I'm just gonna mingle and mix and hop around, make sure I know what the group vibe is. They're all about the group vibe. The one-to-one, when they walk into the party, their immediate thought, who's the one person I know? I'm gonna go talk to them. I'm gonna go probably talk to them the whole time because that's where my comfort level is. So again, all of us have, this looks different in action for every single type. Now we all have all 3. So for instance, I am a one-to-one dominant. My second is self-preservation. My third is social. So the third, being social, is just the instinct that I don't exercise as much. It doesn't mean I don't have it. It just means it's repressed. It just isn't exercised. Just keep that in mind. And why is this so important? Why are subtypes so important? So subtypes are extremely important because subtypes are the reason why two of the same types look completely different. Completely different. So it's the reason why two eights can look like, well, are you sure you're an eight? Because you don't look like a typical eight. Or are you sure you're a nine? You don't act like a typical nine. So this is why subtypes are important. So because it's just another layer of complexity that really explains a lot, and kind of understanding your actions and how you do things the way you do. So add another layer. Okay. So here's the good stuff that you're probably wondering. You've been wondering for the whole time. So how can the Enneagram help me in my business? So there's so many ways the Enneagram can help you in your business, but as a leader, and all of you guys have, I'm assuming, your own teams. You're all leading people. You're all interacting with people. You are developing your own brand, you're selling, you're interacting, you're creating relationships. So the Enneagram can be super helpful to you. Knowing the Enneagram can be such an asset when it comes to your business. So these are the three things that I think the Enneagram can uniquely help us. So the Enneagram reveals your unique leadership style. It also can highlight your challenges and your strengths. It can reveal your blind spots, and it can reveal your unique opportunities for growth. So I'll give you some examples about what this means for me as a 9. So as a 9, my unique leadership style, it looks like I am very participatory and consensus-based. So a unique leadership style that I possess is giving space for each person to share their opinion. I have a high value, 9s have a high value of making sure everyone feels heard. So as a leader, 9s are really gifted in that. They really want to make space for people to share their thoughts, their opinions, to feel included. 9s really, really have a high value for making people feel seen. And that is a huge strength. So that is a leadership style that I have. Another leadership style is 9s tend to stick to really mapped out processes. They're super, they can be detail oriented, but they're very routine oriented people. So they can create step-by-step organization of activities, and just they like to have a system in place. 9s also don't like change, so that can be a blind spot. So as a leader, this is really good for me to know that as a strength, I include everyone else's opinion. But it's also good for me to know that I don't like conflict. 9s hate conflict. They hate it down to the marrow of their bones. They just hate it. So that is something I have to be aware of. I have to make space for myself to voice my opinion, to not be afraid of conflict. So a unique strength that 9s also have that kind of relate to the leadership style is that 9s are really good at being in a stressful situation. They're really good at keeping their calm. So they're really good. Almost a lot of 9s get the phrase like, oh, you're a cool cucumber. Nothing really seems to rile you up, or you tend to be the same wherever you are. So that is a really great strength of 9, is they tend to be very level-headed. They can think clearly under stress, and they can be a safe place for a lot of people. So that is a huge strength. So as a leader, that means you're probably really good at hearing people when they are stressed or need space to process. You're a really great listener. That's probably a huge asset that you would have as you're making relationship and connection with people. You're really good at listening to others, making them feel seen. A challenge that 9s have, or I have definitely as a 9, is 9s have a really hard time making decisions. They cannot for the life of them make decisions very quickly. So that is a challenge and also a blind spot, that as a leader, a lot of the times your teammates are going to look to you to make a decision, and you're going to want to just get everybody's opinion about it. And sometimes you can't, you just have to make a decision. And you need to make that decision confidently, clearly. Nines tend to go on and on and on about all the ups and downs and this way and that way. And it can just really, really can be challenging for nines to be succinct and clear. So that is the growth opportunity for nines as well. So some blind spots. Gosh, blind spots. If we can all just know what our type's blind spots are, it would be huge for how we understand how we show up, how we're affecting other people. So a blind spot, if we understand them, then we can be so much easier to work with, right? So for me as a 9, a blind spot is that I lose track of my own priorities. So that can be so detrimental to in my business. If I'm not really on track or on top of my priorities, then I can I'll let things go. And connected to that, 9s are very self-forgetting. So they're very, very and self-effacing. So they would much rather not promote themselves. They don't want to assume that they have the authority or the power in the room, and they will quickly not leave room for themselves. So that can be a blind spot. Another huge blind spot is trying to please everyone and risk displeasing the most important people. And the hugest, I think the biggest conflict of all, or not the conflict, but one of the biggest blind spots for 9s is that avoiding conflict always leads to more conflict. It's never going to, avoiding conflict produces more conflict. So in essence, that could be you feeling a little hesitant to say no to someone in your team or say your opinion because you're afraid of how they'll receive it. When in essence, if I was just to be truthful with a team member, then it would save me conflict. And that's a blind spot. And opportunities for growth. There's so many opportunities for growth for every type. But I would say for me as a 9, self-remembering is a huge one for 9s. I think for 9s, if they remember who they are, that they have a voice to share, that they have, they can stand on their own 2 feet and own their authority, that their voice is worth being heard. They have something to share that is valuable to others. They are one of the most powerful people you'll ever encounter. So, and without hesitation, offering without hesitation, because you know that what you have is worth someone's time. So that is the growth work for 9s. And again, I wish I could share in detail everybody's unique things here, but because I'm a 9, for you 9s on this call, great, you get some of these tidbits. So, and then I also have, there's growth paths for your subtype as well. So for a 1-to-1 dominant person as a 9, there are particular growth paths that I can look into for even my subtype. So that for me means charting my own path. So 1-to-1s are oriented people are very, 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 they are they like to be very focused on the chemistry of their really important relationships, almost where they kind of lose themselves in the other. And this is so the case for 9s, because 9s already kind of merge a little bit with whoever they're with. So as a 1-to-1 dominant, I can very quickly just assume the thoughts and opinions of the person I'm closest to. And so the growth work for me is to own my own opinions and to be able to stand on my own 2 feet and do something different, and chart my own path, because it's worth creating, even if no one else has done it before, even if I will get a lot of flack for it. Doing something because I know that it is my path to take. That is the growth work for me as a 1-to-1 dominant. And again, this is different for every single subtype dominant person within the type, I mean. Okay. So I know I just talked a lot at you. So these are some things that I think can really help you as leaders. Utilizing Enneagram knowledge can be so transformational. It can be transformational in your personal life first and foremost, but it can also be so helpful when it comes to knowing how you show up with other people, knowing how you show up with your teammates, with your with people that you're building relationships with, knowing how you come across, what your communication style is like, how you're being received, what feedback you're giving, and what feedback is helpful to hear within your own type. That can be so helpful. And it looks different for every type. So what can you do with this information? There's a lot of different things you can do, but here's something that, some next steps. So I said I'm a coach. So just for Team Happy and Fit, I am offering to any one of you guys who wants to be a part of this, leadership and Enneagram coaching specific. So here's kind of the process of what this will look like. We'll do a 90-minute typing interview. So I have been professionally trained in the Enneagram, so I know how to do typing interviews. So we would go through a typing interview, a formal typing interview, where we would discover your type and your subtype, which is so important. Then we do 3 one-on-one coaching sessions, and we would coach on the things that I had just talked about. So your unique leadership style, your strengths and challenges. Then we'll coach on blind spots. We'll coach on your growth opportunities for your own type and your subtype. And, I provide materials for you to read through, reflection sheets, the whole shebang. And just for Team Happy and Fit, the cost is $250, which is a smacking deal. It's regularly $400 that I do for other clients. So if any of you are interested, you can please feel free to sign up. This is where you can sign up, jclarkcoaching@gmail.com. And just because, I would love to coach all of you, but I have some limited capacity. So how I'm going to do this is I'll coach 4 people at a time. I coach in 4s. So it's first come, first serve. So the first 4 people that sign up for coaching with me, you get priority. We can start immediately. But as you are expressing interest, or if you would like to coach, I would love to do that with you, but I'll just have start dates staggered. And we'll do it that way. So yes, that is what I'm offering for just your team. If you would like to partake in some coaching with me. And thank you so much. That's all I have for us. And I know that you may have questions. So I'd love to take questions if you have any.
You are amazing. You're so good. And we learn so much from you. And we have taken, I'm just like, I need to do this because the workshop you did for our marriage life group is just like even different than this, where I'm like, my mind is blown. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that workshop was super good.
Good.
Yes.
I'm so glad.
Super good and super helpful. So in the comments, first of all, they're blowing it up and saying you're amazing, and that was so awesome. So keep doing that for sure. And then what questions do you have for Jess as with the Enneagram or her presentation? I think for me, I'm just so curious to know about my blind spots. I think that was like something where I'm like, oh, if I just know my blind spots, that because you were even the whole time you're like, yep, like that was super good. And then the path to growth, like this can not only help your businesses, this can help your relationships. Like if you can be fully aware of this. Okay, we have a question here.
Sure.
Are there differences in the Enneagram test? I feel like there are so many different options to take it.
That's a great question. I'm a little biased about this question. So I personally think, well, one, I have not seen a test that is good enough. So my personal opinion is I think tests are a waste of time because they are not accurate. They're not always accurate. So a lot of people will take a test, a free test, or maybe a test that costs a couple bucks, whatever. And they'll think they're a certain type. And then 10 years later, they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not that type. So the tests are unreliable for a couple of reasons. The biggest is that you test how you want to be portrayed. And the tests are pretty skewed, so they're not always reliable. The Enneagram certification program that I'm going through is developing a test right now that I think could be really good. and I've seen it. They're still in the testing phase of it. But other than that test, I have not seen a test that is worth your time. So that I'm pretty opinionated about it, obviously. But that's why I'm doing typing interviews, because that by far is way more accurate, because you're actually talking to a person who knows the Enneagram, can see you, ask you questions, and really get to your top couple types. That's really the best way to go. So maybe that was.
We can condone that, because when we sat in your workshop, that was the whole day, and you were able to, you really coached the group, but then you coached us on our number and within our marriages, which was so detailed and so helpful, and just awareness of like how we can communicate better, what Eric would need of me instead of what I would just project, and vice versa. Of like, I remember one thing, you didn't realize how much I just want to be told I'm doing a great job, even though I would never voice that. Like it, super helpful. So, what other questions do you have? What books would you recommend on someone wanting to know more about the Enneagram?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the book that I send people to is The Road Back to You by Ian Cron. That's the best. That's just a really quick primer, introductory to the Enneagram. It's really fun. It's a quick read. That's a good one to start with.
And we just read
The Path Between Us.
The Path Between Us.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's such a good one.
And that one is for relationships.
Yeah. Yes.
What other questions do we have? Steph said it's good to actually know why this is so important instead of just everyone taking a test and learning about their types. Yes. Thank you for giving me a better awareness. Do you want to comment on that, about why it's actually good to know why this is important instead of just like knowing your number? Because can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, why the Enneagram is important.
Yeah.
Versus just knowing your number.
Right.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I think the biggest thing, aside from just self-awareness, I think self-awareness is one of the most powerful things and the biggest gifts you can give yourself. Because kind of like what I said before, a lot of times we're just asleep to ourselves. And when we have self-awareness, we can wake up in different ways. And when we are self-aware, it gives us the ability to see other people differently. And so when we are doing our inner work and doing the work of understanding how we're wired, then we can in turn understand the closer people around us. So that I think the Enneagram gives us the gift of understanding just in general. Not only just the gift of compassion, but the gift of understanding. And I think that's really, really important.
That's so good.
Yeah, just like, oh, I see you now. I think when I understood my husband's type, it was just mind blown. I just like, oh, I see you. And I think that can just be so powerful and so healing for relationship.
And you like get less frustrated or because you're a different person. And so Eric avoiding conflict, and me, I love conflict.
Right.
That was a major conflict within our communication. And then now knowing how to better communicate with him when it's tough and giving him that safe space to just think. Or for him, he realized that if I were to say, how was your day? He could be like, well, I woke up at 5 a.m. and go through every detail, but what I want is a list of the top 3 favorite things in the day. Like, just give me like, I don't know, it's just helped us a greater understanding. And then I would say too, like, something you taught me, and I mean, just in the theme of Enneagram, is that you not only understand others, but you understand yourself better, because maybe growing up, people told you that you were bossy or opinionated or lazy or, all these things, and categorized you in a way that made you feel negative, where I feel like when you understand yourself, you start to see that maybe the things that you felt bad about are actually your gift, and it just flips your mindset around it of like, you're not lazy, you just are more chill and a peacemaker. Didn't you get called lazy? That's why I'm using that. Didn't people say that to you?
Yeah.
Like you were
Yeah.
called that, like that, and then really it's just like, no, like you're indifferent, even though you have opinions of just like it's a beautiful thing of wanting people to feel.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Right. And so it's good to remember too that we all have one type. We can't change types over time. We can't just in one season, oh, I'm also this type. You can't be dual, you can't have a dual type thing going on. It's just you are one type. And so what the great thing about the Enneagram is, though, it reveals, kind of like what I was talking about with the Enneagram as a map, it reveals your path for growth. So within every number, there is a unique development track. What you're like, it reveals what you're like when you're healthy, unhealthy, and at your average space. And it reveals what you're like when you're stressed and when you're insecurity. It reveals so much about who we are. So the Enneagram isn't just a cookie cutter thing. It's like I was saying, the symbol is dynamic. So we take on different flavors of other types depending on the arrows and the connections. But that's a lot of higher level Enneagram stuff. But it is very, very complex and dynamic, which is one of the reasons I love it so much.
So good. We have more questions coming in.
Yeah.
How did you get connected to the Enneagram?
Oh, that's a great question. I was going to put that in there, but I didn't. So I'm glad someone asked. So I got connected. I'm just a personality junkie. I mean, I'm all about the personality assessments. So I've always just had an interest in them. So it's not surprising that I jumped on it. So I got introduced to it a couple years ago. Oh gosh, several years ago now. And I just heard, so I have a couple, I'll call them author friends, some authors that I follow just religiously. Shauna Nequist, that's one of them. Emily P. Freeman, they're my author friends. So everything they do, I follow. And they were talking in one of their podcasts about the Enneagram. And then from there, I just kept hearing it. So I decided to read The Road Back to You. And it was on a summer vacation. And I brought the book and I just demolished it. I mean, I read it in like 2 days. So I was just, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I basically forced my entire family on both sides to read the book. Now, all of our family members know their Enneagram types, which is great. That is huge. If your family can know all of your Enneagram types, man, that is game changer. So that's how I was introduced to it. However, it took me about a year and a half to figure out I was a 9. So you can mistype yourself super easily. And for 9s in particular, that's very easy to do. There are a couple types that are really hard to type. There are some that are like, yep, I know I'm a 1, got it. Some, it can be really easy to identify for yourself. Others have a harder time. So 9s have a really hard time because they see themselves in the shoes of all the other types. That's why they sit on the very top of the symbol. They look down at all the other types. The 9s are the crown of the Enneagram. So I had a hard time. I just didn't know for about a couple of years, and it drove me bonkers. But I finally figured it out, and I am the most 9 of 9s you'll ever meet. Very secure in my 9ness.
That's so good. Turner wants to know, do you do Enneagram interviews and coaching for couples, like an individual couple?
Ooh.
We hadn't talked about that, Turner, but Jess, I'll let you call that. I don't know.
I have done marriage workshops, but gosh, I would love to do that. That sounds really interesting. I haven't actually done, so I do typing interviews with individuals, but I haven't done coaching for couples as of yet. It's always been a dream of mine to do that, to lead Enneagram marriage retreats. That's like a long-term dream I have. And I would love to do that with my husband someday. He doesn't know that, but we're going to do it at some point. Yeah, so I haven't done that as of yet, but it's something that I would really be interested in. I think it'd be really, really cool.
Yeah, you sit on it. We'll talk, Turner. I'll get a hold of you. Depending on your type, could you build your business at different speeds? So,
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, would you have another?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
At different speeds. Yes. Yes. So there's a concept in Enneagram called triads. And I didn't talk about this because there's a lot of Enneagram knowledge that I couldn't go into. Again, I do 2 to 4 hour workshops. So there's a concept in Enneagram called triads. And that is, there's the head triad, the heart triad, the gut triad. So there are 3 numbers within each of those triads. And really just it means how you perceive the world. Do you take information in through your head, your heart, or your gut? So depending on where you fall, that can reveal a lot. So for the gut people, we make decisions a lot of times on impulse or gut instincts. And so that means we can be really quick in our decisions or really slow in our decisions. If you're a head type, it could take you forever to make a decision because you're thinking of all the different things. And for heart types, it can vary. It depends. And I would also say there's different forms of triads within the Enneagram. So there's the aggressive types, the dependent types, and the withdrawn types. So if you're an aggressive types, type 8, 7, and 3, you get things done. You are just bam, bam, bam. It does not take you very long to get something accomplished. If you have a process, you're going to do it. For the withdrawn types, it can take like 9s, 4s, 5s. It can take them a long time to get things moving. So it just depends. So there's not really one answer there. I'm sorry. So it just, I would say it depends on type.
Friend, you're blowing our minds. It's so good. I'm going to hit end on the